In this video, we'll think about and test your experiment. In the previous step, we created some research questions. Now it is time to think about an experiment that will allow us to collect data that may help us answer this research question. To do this, first we'll consider the equipment required for the experiment, and then we'll see why it is so important to test this experiment before going any further. Let's begin with the equipment. Logically, your experiment, so also equipment, will depend on the research question. As an example, I will take the following research question from the previous video. So here our independent variable is the height of the water in the glass, and the dependent variable is the frequency of the sound wave. Therefore, we need to think about an experiment that will allow us to measure the frequency of the sound wave in the glass for different water heights. One way to do this is to fill a glass with water to different heights, tap the side of the glass with, for example, a metal spoon, and somehow measure the frequency of the sound wave that is created. Now that we have a mental image of our experiment, we can think about the equipment. To start with, we need a glass and some water, along with a measuring tape. To create the sound wave, we'll also need a metal spoon to tap the side of the glass. Finally, we need to measure the frequency of the sound wave in the glass. There are many different ways we can do this. A simple option is the Arduino Science Journal app that can be used on a smartphone. Once you have your equipment list, take some time to pause and think. Before going any further, just make sure that you have access to all the equipment, because it would be a waste of time to start writing your IA and then find out that you're unable to carry out the experiment due to a lack of equipment. It might be a good idea at this point to talk to your physics teacher or lab technician at your school about the equipment that you plan to use. Once you have confirmed that all the equipment you need is available, it is time to test your experiment. Now you might be asking, why test the experiment instead of writing up the research design section of your IA and then carrying out the entire experiment all at once? I realize that doing a test might initially seem like a waste of time. However, setting up your equipment and collecting some data at this point will likely make your life easier and save you some time in the long run. Let's see why. Once your equipment is properly set up, I recommend that you collect data at least at the highest and the lowest value of the independent variable. So if we go with the research question from earlier in this video, assuming that our glass is, let's say, 13 centimeters tall, the greatest value for the height of the water in the glass could be 12 centimeters, and the lowest value, so when the glass is empty, would be 0 centimeters. During your testing, you record the frequency of the sound wave for at least these two values. Here are the frequency values that I got for 3 different measurements at the 2 different water level heights. These measurements show us that there seems to be a significant difference in the frequency values, depending on the height of the water in the glass, and that repeated measurements give us consistent frequency values. To get even more confirmation, you can of course measure the frequency for further water level heights. So what we can conclude based on this simple test is that it is easy to change the independent variable, that it is easy to measure the dependent variable, and that the dependent variable, so the frequency, gives us a good data range. So now that we have a research question and an experiment that seems to work well, we are ready to think about the research design in more depth. This is what we'll start doing in the next video.